Good morning. How good was Henry? I only got to meet him just a moment ago. Henry's been in the country to study for 2 months, and he's standing up in front of you. So please join me in thanking Henry again. So hemp, we're continuing the story in the same sort of family, I suppose, and we've got a great panel here today to talk through and explain what's the exciting possibilities for hemp, both in Australia and internationally, and as Henry alluded to, also, not only from a product point of view, but from a sustainability point of view. So with us today, Tegan, Lachlan, Emilio, and Brittany. I'm not going to go through long introductions. You can actually read better than I can their affiliations above that. But I'm actually going to go through and have each of them give a little bit of an introduction about who they are and why are they in this business? What's their passion in this business? So Tegan, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So in 2016, I founded High on Hemp, which is an educational platform in which we raise awareness about cannabis overall and define how its purpose can change, I guess, how we live. Behind the scenes, we operate as a full-service marketing agency in which we work in the Australian and international market. In 2018, I co-founded Ma Milk with Lachlan, in which we brought together a local supply of hemp seed and HPP, which is high-pressure pasteurization, and created a hemp milk product, which is called Ma Milk.
Excellent. Thank you. Lachlan.
Thank you. So I guess my journey started in 2013. I guess inspired by sustainability around the crop. One of very few crops around the world that can house you, clothe you, heal you, and feed you. And once getting into the industry, we saw there's a bit of a gap and a lack of seed supply and adequate quality control around genetics. And simply just supply chains that weren't meeting any sort of domestic or international demand, let alone the industry was pretty much nullified by human consumption being illegal for hemp products, which was only legalised in November, so 2017. So Hemp Farms Australia is pretty much a seed to supply vertically integrated supply chain. We produce our own genetics. We have access to subtropical Australian genetics that have been bred over the past 15 years and pretty much just broadacre farming and cropping, as well as co-founded Ma Milk in 2018, simply because we saw that there was little to no competition or, I guess, innovation in this field. And hemp milk's a great product, and we have a supply chain that we can plug straight into it that's supporting local farmers.
Emilio.
Good morning, I'm Emilio. I'm from Italy, and my passion about hemp starts in one of the 40 most polluted cities in Italy. We have a high content of heavy metals, CO2. We have 2 petrochemical plants, 1 steel factory, and 2 incinerators. And the city is like a basin, so imagine how the quality of life is there. And we discovered that hemp or cannabis cannot just be used for recreational purposes, but also for clean the soil and clean the air. And we started making again a new circular system based on cannabis, because Italy at the beginning of the century was the first hemp producer for quality in the world and the second for quantity. And then after the 50s, everything died for almost 50, 60 years. And now we need to find some new ways to understand how cannabis can help people, environment, and also had a high social impact.
Excellent. And Brittany.
Good morning. I'm Brittany. I am from Austin, Texas. I'm with Hungry Planet Intelligence. We are an AI drone-based software platform for farmers, specifically in the industrial hemp space, as well as Oso Vega as a value-added partner for every step along the supply chain. As Corporate Consciousness Director, it is my mission to elevate our industry to holding that accountability at the highest standards. Hemp, in its nature, is an incredibly sustainable plant. It's also a phytoremediator, meaning that it sucks up everything in the soil. So if you're leaving the soil behind with pesticides, that's ending up in your final product. And so along our supply chain, creating those efficiencies, we believe that we can hold the farmers, the processors, the retailers to that higher standard of sustainable practices.
So Brittany, let's continue that. So you talked about drone technology specifically for the hemp. So how big is the industry? I mean, I wouldn't have thought it's that huge that it's specialised. So can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, the U.S. just legalized CBD in December of 2018. The rush of U.S. farmers into the space has been ridiculous. They're leaving behind a lot of these low-margin crops in soy and corn to jump into this booming new market space. There's a lot of promise of a very high revenue stream in CBD and industrial hemp. So there's a lot of farmers that aren't sure how to grow it. And because, as I mentioned before, of this need to farm with the highest level of practices, no chemicals can go into that crop. So we've created a process that allows farmers to pinpoint that exact plant that may need a biostimulant, and with the GPS coordinate, they can go spray an exact spot with an organic pesticide as opposed to blanket spraying an entire field of inorganic chemicals.
Have you got some figures around what they value the market at?
I don't, unfortunately. That is not my area of expertise.
We're going to get the figures out of one of you guys, so someone else is going to have to produce the data.
It is
it's
big.
It's big, okay.
That's
Excellent.
all I know.
You're not from Texas, are you?
I am.
Okay.
That's right. Everything is bigger around there. That's true.
How did we guess? Emilio, do you want to crack at Europe? Tell us about the market in Europe and.
Well, the cannabis market is growing right now, is exploding. In 2016, Italy was the first country to kind of legalize, but you know, the Italian way is legal, but it's not legal. It's written, but it's something, okay. You can sell it.
We've got some great stereotypes going here, haven't we?
And they started the hemp flower market, and then gives a new life to the hemp business. In 2016, the market just in Italy were 1.6 million euros, and now is over the 200 million euros, just in less than 18 months. So everyone is running again to this new gold era of cannabis. But we're facing now in Italy a lot of problems, a lot of issues with traceability, with the sustainability, and also with the presence in Europe of countries that can breed their genetics in a different way or freely, as we cannot do it in Italy, as Switzerland. They are importing products from Switzerland, and they sell it in Italy, but we cannot do or reply or breed anything else that is different from the 63 EU allowed genetics. So that's been a little bit hard for us to find again the fiber proper textile hemp that create in Italy in the Mussolini period. In those 20 years, the 15% of the whole country inputs was coming from hemp. Now Italy is running again, but Spain and France, they are growing and is expanding. Actually, we are looking also for other markets, like South America. We are growing now medical cannabis in Colombia, THC and CBD and CBG and many other components, as we were saying before, that it's not just one molecule in the cannabis plant that makes the difference. It's the interaction between all those molecules, terpenes, flavonoids, and cannabinoids, and many others. So we have a long road in front of us, but we're ready for it.
Excellent. Lachlan, can you tell us about the Australian market and the size and the sort of products?
Australian market, grain, and if we're talking whole plant wise, I believe the fibre industry is currently tapped by the amount of access to processing there is. Whereas there's been a lot of investment nationally into grain processing. It's not something that we, as Hemp Farms Australia, focus on, but we have a lot of knowledge and insight into what goes on production-wise, and in turn that turns into obviously what goes on retail-wise, and we can make comparisons on, what brands out there are using imported product and what brands out there are using locally grown product. And I guess the way that we have access to that is because we distribute the genetics to majority of the growers in the Northern Hemisphere part of the regions of Australia. At the moment, grain-wise, total market nationally, I believe, is around 3,500 to 4,000 tonne annually. At a wholesale level, that's around $4 to $4.50 a kilo on that 3,500 tonne. At a retail level, we're looking at grain, pretty much levelling out around $6 a kilo, and once it goes through a further process, you can see it upwards of $25 a kilo, either packaged into a dehulled product, dehulled seed, you're looking at $40, $45 a kilo. So with the fibre though, there's some really, really exciting projects going on. Obviously the bioplastics is something that's heating up. You've got companies like Shep looking into timber replacements for their biodegradable pallets. So you take away the whole aspects of importing and exporting different varieties and species of timbers globally, and the treatment that needs to be done on those timbers so that you can have an ethical standard of timber. Whereas now we're working with plastics that it doesn't really matter and they can biodegrade over 180 days. So yeah, I wouldn't really have a pinpoint idea or an approximate idea of the size of the fibre market, but I can say that it is growing. There is investment going in. There are ex-cane growing regions up in northern Queensland, Tweed Heads, the Maroochy Shire, where soil is really impacted from the exhaustiveness of sugarcane. So we're looking into pretty much areas that aren't flood prone that we can grow high amounts of fibre, and that fibre is at the moment being produced or being processed to building hemp homes. So there's a lot of hemp homes being done by Hemp Homes Australia and Australian Hemp Innovations, another company down in Victoria, where we are now.
Is it true? I thought on hemp homes, the fire resistance nature of them?
Yeah, that's the whole reason why BMW, Mercedes and Audi are using it in their dashboards and their panels. It's stronger than what they use at the moment, and it doesn't actually add to a fire if something does go wrong in the car. So yeah, as well as insulation, keeps you warm during winter, keeps you cool during summer. So there's a lot of good uses for it in terms of building materials, timber replacement materials, and also just recycling what we currently import for recycled paper. We can replace that with hemp, but the only issue is there's not enough being produced.
Yeah. So you touched on some areas. So what's the ideal area for growing hemp? Sort of regions of Australia, climate?
Essentially, hemp is a weed. You've seen it grow in people, Coca-Cola cans in a cupboard in Parramatta, and you've seen cannabis grown in huge scaled up areas, in dryland areas, hemp can grow in any soil medium. It depends on what variety you're using, and it depends on how you're planting it and how it's being grown. You can manipulate hemp really easily. We've been working on subtropical localising varieties to withstand drought and withstand random frost periods throughout the year. And as our climate is changing, it's something that needs to be focused on heavily is genetics that work in all latitudinal regions of Australia. And as the gentleman in the previous panel said, the companies that have access to genetics and can actually produce more crops annually are those that are going to actually be able to produce a product and ensure their supply chain annually.
Excellent. So Tegan, if you read my bio, I'm on Dairy Australia board. So give me your pitch for your milk.
I knew you were going to ask me
You
this.
had this. It's a
I'm
setup.
not going up against the dairy industry.
Come on, give me your pitch. Well, I'm going to...
Look, I think that, what Lachlan and I decided when we first looked into, doing Ma milk is we saw it as, another alternative of milk that, just to put it into perspective, at the moment in Australia, there's over 2 million vegetarians and vegans living here. So obviously the plant-based milk market is starting to grow. And most commonly we see, almond oat, but a lot of the products that are out there are actually very, very low in raw materials. So when you flip over the packet and you look, there's probably only 1 to 2% of almonds or oats actually in it. With Ma milk, we use 10% of raw materials in the milk product. So it has that really thick, creamy consistency that you feel when you're drinking normal milk, which was something that we really wanted to replicate. But I think as well, going back to what everyone has said, that, hemp is a sustainable, product for the environment. So to grow it, and I think we really wanted to support the Australian industry. And it was something that was really important to us, because we hear so much about what hemp can be used for, and they say, there's 25,000 different things that hemp can be used for, right? But none of that is possible unless we have the infrastructure to do that here in Australia. So when you support Australian farmers and these products are using Australian ingredients, that's when you're giving money back to what we so desperately need, which is infrastructure. But in terms of comparing hemp milk to, dairy milk, I think that, look, change is happening at the moment. Dairy farmers especially, they're in trouble at the moment, and we read that in the press, and we weren't going up against them. But I think that the practices in which we've been seeing that have been used for the past, last 100 years may not be sustainable for the next 100 years. So I think that Ma milk, is, an innovative and new product that people can explore.
How's it go, my latte or my cappuccino?
Perfectly.
Perfectly. Excellent. Excellent. And look, I think my point of these is about the alternative. There is space in these markets for a lot of us. We do need to look at alternative added value crops. We can also farm sustainably, livestock. So there's space in this for everywhere, and I think that's my theme in that area is, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Now, you also touched on something about, holding the industry back. Do you want to talk about what, with all the things we've heard about, why aren't we all just going down? What's holding the industry back in Australia?
From
a rapid expansion.
Well, I think that education is firstly a big thing. I mean, we've only been working in an industry that's been legal for 2 years. So we're still really at, the beginning roots of this industry, and infrastructure is another thing as well that we need to create these products that we're hearing about. But I think, there still is a lot of, there's a misconception out, in society as to what hemp is. And obviously the medicinal side of cannabis is getting a lot of press at the moment, and there's a lot of focus on that. And that's something that, as an educational platform, we try to change. We've been starting to talk more about the industrial side of hemp. But I think that there's nothing really holding us back right now. I think that,
Is there plenty of capital? People willing to put investments into expand production?
Yeah, most definitely. And, it really starts with the farmers, and it starts with the infrastructure, and then, brands and consumers can really start to benefit off of, what's happening. But I think it's important that we're concentrating on what we're doing here in Australia. We're not, importing product from overseas or fabrics from overseas, because that's what's happening at the moment. The clothing that we're wearing, the hemp clothing that's being sold in Australia isn't being made in Australia. It's being, brought in from China, as an example.
Yep. So, Milo, I know you're passionate about the sustainability, and I think everyone's mentioned this. So, can you explain to us more about why is this such a great product from a sustainability? I think you're also talking from a point of view, and I think, Lachlan, you mentioned remediation of land as well.
Yes, that's the point. So we were looking for something that can give us the chance to get the Italian economics start again, the farmers get out of this crisis period that is combined of economical crisis and climate change. And Italy has the biggest biodiversity in the world, but right now with the climate change, many things are changing. Olive trees, we have historical olive trees that are dying in the south of Italy. We're talking about trees that are more than 300 and 400 years, dying just because they were attacked from a bacteria coming from Singapore, from Asia. Okay, and so this is changing a lot. How we have to see this new market. And we started with our example. We live in a really polluted city. Hemp is giving the chance to our farmers to start again, to doing something. So they grow cannabis in the polluted areas, and we use that cannabis to produce fibers, bioplastics, or biomaterials of any kind. And to finance the production of hemp, cannabis, in the clean areas. That gives us the chance to go in many of those towns and cities and educate, as you were saying before. Education is the first thing, because when we talk about cannabis, oh, you're a stoner, right? Yeah, okay. No, we're talking about high-protein food. We are talking about something that could kill cancer cells, could change our DNA, and we're talking about something that is not new. We didn't invent nothing. Cannabis was discovered maybe and used in China maybe more than 28 million years ago are the first references, so it's not something new. We have to learn it again and introduce it in, for example, as we are doing right now, in a complex system to have a more sustainable cities and communities. Because that is the point. I'm specialized in cooperation and peacekeeping and all those things that when we see the Italian jails are full of people who committed crime, but crimes about what? Carrying a gram, 2 grams of a weed, because is a weed. And that cost a lot to the government, cost a lot to the community. We can change direction, because actually the direction is changing. But Italy now doesn't have infrastructures. We need that, as the same thing in Australia. I've seen in Cologne 3 months ago in the European International Hemp Association Forum that many companies from all around the world are coming to Italy to invest in Italy. But the Italian farmers right now are less helped to grow hemp. So why? They are helping foreign companies, but they are not helping us. So that's why we are here. We're not here to sell our products. We are here to share and cooperate with Australians to have a better hemp here and in Italy. Not just sell my product. I don't want to sell the tuna can. I want to teach how to fish. That's okay?
I'd love to just touch back on what is kind of delaying our push forward into this market. If you think about something like bioplastic or hemp plastics, the technology has been around for many years, but it's a lot like biofuel. It's these sustainable innovations that do at the moment cost more money than regular fossil fuels. Hemp plastics cost more money than single-use plastic. So we really need investors to start looking into that long-term investment, that impact investing, because we're finally getting to the point where we're waking up to the fact that we need these alternative ways to produce plastics and concrete that are more sustainable. So I think it's important that we start to dial in to the investors that really are looking for that long-term return. Because we're going to get to a point where we're going to need to rely on these alternative sources.
And I think you touched on, when we were chatting outside, consumer perceptions, and what's the consumer looking for? Sure. This is Tegan. Okay.
You can touch on it.
Let's go with Tegan first. We'll come back. What's the consumer looking for? What's their perception out?
Well, I think that In terms of product?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of...
And product quality.
Yeah, so definitely, first of all, education. So education in a sense that cannabis overall is controversial because it's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and people are trying to figure out the basics, really. And as I touched on before, there's a lot happening on the medical side. So I think that really concentrating on the industrial hemp side is key. Transparency is also a big thing. I think that, it's not just in the hemp industry or the cannabis industry, it's happening everywhere, and it's why, events like this exist, is that people are very aware at the moment of how their products are being made, where they're being made, who's making them, and I guess the ethics and the ethics behind the brands who are making, I guess, these products. And then thirdly is product innovation. So at the moment, and what we've seen for the last 2 years is just hemp seed, hemp flour, hemp protein, and hemp oil on retail shelves at the moment, and people are really trying to figure out what they can use these products for and what they can make with them. So the brands that are succeeding in the industry, who are creating things from hemp milks to hemp kombuchas to on-the-go ready snacks of protein bars and chips, as an example, I think that they're succeeding at the moment, because that's what consumers want.
Yeah. Brittany, you want to add to this one?
In the States, I think one of the biggest problems we're seeing is that consumers want to get involved, but they really don't know what they're looking for. They don't know how to dose. They don't know what the difference of cannabinoids and terpenes and all these words that are being thrown out at them. We have an endocannabinoid system, which I think it's a ridiculous stat that in the States, only 13% of medical schools are teaching that entire system exists. And that's a huge problem. Like, this is a supplement that we should be taking daily because our systems are not working properly. But again, it's education, and it's letting the consumer have access to that ability to see into the product, that traceability, so that they can understand dosing. So when they do drink, they have their hemp milk and they take their CBD and they're using their CBD cream, what's appropriate? How much is too much? Is too much too much? So we need to get to the point where the consumer knows what they want, instead of it just being this buzzword of the latest CBD product.
I was just chatting to one of my colleagues before, and he said he uses hemp face cream and hemp shampoo, but he wasn't that pretty, so I said, let's not use that example. I hope he's not here. All right.
I was just going to add on I think the importance of education, as Tegan was saying, as everyone was saying, it flows right down the supply chain. I have conversations daily with cockies from Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, everywhere from cane growers to cotton growers to sorghum growers who are producing thousands of hectares of either dryland cotton, or it really all comes down to numbers. Is this commodity going to return me as much as my other commodity will? Or am I going to use this crop as a rotation to supplement, nitrogen deficiency in my soils? These things, that's all farmers care about. Return on, dollar per acre, return on their input. So if farmers, I guess nationally in Australia, knew the numbers within hemp, they would be much more forgiving and to remove that stigma to it. But the only thing that's really helped, I guess, companies like ourselves is reports on Landline and ABC Rural, which are really showing farmers that this stuff is legit, and people are actually growing this, and it does actually work, and they are actually selling it and making money on it and making a better return per hectare to some of their crops.
So if someone wants to get into this business, either from growing it or from manufacturing to retail, where they start? I know you guys have your own conference already. I think you're up to 2 or 3 rounds of having the hemp conference. I think the first one was in Geelong.
Was it Sydney? Yeah, the
Fremantle. There we go.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Free plug. When? Thank you.
No, that's fine. I really enjoyed your CSIRO thing last year that we went to on Fibre, yeah.
That's the one I'm probably thinking about, yeah.
So
So they want to get into it? Where do they go?
It depends. If you're in a growing side of the industry, if you're a primary producer and you're wanting to include this as a rotation to your crop, whether you have access to water or not, the first thing would be to speak to your local Department of Primary Industries, look at how to get a license, or there are there are probably two major supply chains in Australia, probably three. Only two of them are offering seed that will actually grow in areas that they're probably in. I know one of them's down in Victoria and takes care of Tasmania, and the other one's us up in the northern sort of hemisphere of Australia. So it'd actually be talking to someone that has adequate knowledge on varieties that will work in your latitude, that have access to agronomists that have been working with this plant for 5-10 years. Otherwise, you're just going to be sold a dream, and people will follow this dream, and they have. And then that dream will turn into a nightmare, and pretty much everything that they've been told about this crop will be not wrong.
So the Department of Ags have got extension people who can help you out. I know they've pulled back an extension in most areas, but there's people there who can help you.
To get a license, yeah. It's not hard to get a license. You just need a clean criminal background, a police check. That's really it. You need to have access to seed, and that seed needs to be certified with local primary industry. And Bob's your uncle, go for it.
Excellent. We've touched a bit, I think we might have even dealt with the regulatory. Any further comments, I think, on the regulatory issues?
In Europe, right now, just Bulgaria regulated CBD, and the other countries are selling CBD in many ways. One of the biggest problem right now is that, for example, for the cosmetic and topic use, we are allowed just to use synthetic CBD. That's something that is going really outside of why we are here. Sustainability, biodiversity, creating new crops and educated farmers. That's far away because just the pharmaceuticals can produce the synthetic CBD. And actually the effect of the single molecule extracted like that, we have many doubts on it. So that's a difficult point too. But other countries right now are really going on. Estonia, Lithuania, Italy also, and the south of France and Germany. The things are growing, and I think in the next couple of years they will change a lot, because in the 2021 plastics, single-use plastics in Europe will be outlawed. So now everyone is running to have this new hemp bioplastics or linum bioplastics, or mix it. So it will grow, and we shall focus not just on how can I grow, but there are many opportunities in the business, so we can choose easily.
All right, before we get into questions, I want to just go through the panel. Favourite misconception about hemp? That's Brittany. Your favourite story that you've heard out that...
One of the biggest problems that we're having in the States right now is so little regulation around the CBD products that just recently in a southern state, they are able to sell CBD at gas stations. The testing bodies went in and grabbed a random $60 bottle of CBD off the shelves. It was 100% coconut oil. This is a huge problem that consumers are being ripped off, and they're being sold a product that is meant to bring healing, and they're taking it going, this is all hype, this isn't real. And they're missing out on this really beneficial, beautiful product. So not so much a misconception, but just this lack of truth in the industry right now it's troubling. And so we're really working hard over in the States, and I think it's spreading to create some traceability platforms that will alleviate you guys spending $80, $100 on an oil that you could get for $3 at Whole Foods.
Hello, favourite misconception?
I think that that people think that CBD is good and THC is bad, and hemp is good and cannabis is bad, when marijuana is the worst. Those are the same plant. Cannabis sativa ligneo is the same plant. No differences. Differences in the percentage of the molecules and the differences in it and the effect that they have. But it's not that THC is something bad or CBD is something good. Both have good qualities. And of all those complexes present in the cannabis plant, just the THC is psychoactive. And the other ones are not. The tetrahydrobivarin, it gives you the sensation that you're less hungry. So everyone says, you have the munchies where you use cannabis, you're more hungry. But there are many of those. So that's the problem in Italy. THC is good, CBD hemp, the THC is bad, CBD and hemp is good. It's the same plant, and we need to be allowed to work with the whole plant, not just parts of it.
Yeah. And I'm guessing smoking hemp is really not a great thing to recommend.
It's not recommended because you have the combustion, you get fire on it, and the temperature is almost like a cigarette, 400 to 500 degrees. So that's the worst part, and you burn almost the 70% of cannabinoids. So maybe it could be better to vaporize it or use it in other ways, but actually in Italy, just today, just the flower market, it values more than the 70% of the whole hemp market. Because everyone is buying the hemp flower collection hemp flower, because in the etiquette is not written that you can smoke it. It's collection, the Italian style thing.
Tegan, I see Lachlan's passed it on to you. He's going to duck this one. Do you want to go for a miss?
I was just getting it ready.
Oh, getting it ready. Okay, excellent.
Always prepared. I feel really simple. Well, not simple. It's quite complex, but the difference between an industrial hemp crop that we produce compared to an industrial hemp crop that friends of ours would produce in Oregon, say for example, simply their, cannabinoid profile is producing phytocannabinoids with THC less than 0.5% CBD, upwards of 8% to make it viable for extraction. But the difference between what they're doing and what we're doing is we produce a high percentage of males within our crop, and males is what pollinates females. And when females are pollinated by males, they produce grain. And that grain is what we use to on-sell for processing to either resow crops or to produce oils or dehulled grain or protein or livestock feed. What they're doing what they're doing with CBD crops is they're removing all of the males. So you're pretty much creating a feminized female that can auto-flower herself, and she doesn't actually produce grain, she produces flour, which then, holds the essential oils that they're wanting to extract for CBD. Yeah.
Okay. Tegan?
Well, just to touch on what both of you said, I guess about, hemp not being cannabis and cannabis not being hemp, the amount of times I see people say hemp isn't cannabis, it's wrong. It's all the same thing. How I like to explain it is, it's very, very similar to the animal kingdom, dogs in particular. So you have the dog kingdom, and below that you have multiple different breeds, which all have their own personalities. Cannabis is exactly the same. So you have THC, CBD, and another thing at the moment that I'm seeing is there's a lot of conversation around CBD, especially CBD extracted from hemp, and there is a lot of people selling a product into Australia at the moment, which is making people think that it's legal for them to buy. So they're probably the two biggest misconceptions.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's go to the audience now, and Will here, if you've been using the app, Will has some questions. Will, have you got some questions there ready for us?
I've got plenty of questions here, but
Excellent.
I'm going to throw it to the floor first. So has anyone got any immediate questions? I'm going to go with young Henry here.
Hi. So since hemp bioplastics are eco-friendly, and if, let's say, they're getting dumped into the ocean the rate that normal plastics are getting dumped into right now, would it not change the biodiversity of the animals, that their diets, because planktons eat these plastics, even though they do take 3 to 6 months to biodegrade. Would it not change the whole dietary plan? Like if planktons eat them, sharks eat them, whales eat them, and then we eat them, would it reduce some nutrients?
Really? Do you want to?
Thank you, Henry.
And actually, in the bioplastics, there are no omega-3s or 6 or fat acids or proteins or else. It's just fibers. So it's the same as the fishes or other animals already eat. But it's something that we might focus on it to have more trials, more surveys. That the thing that we were saying before. I don't know. Sometimes the industry invests on production and marketing and many other things, and less on medical surveys and trials. We have to be clear right now, and that can be a big doubt for the future. What happens if most of all plastics became bioplastics, and then we have all stoner fishes? No. Thank you for the question.
Will, what else have you got there?
We've got a few questions along a similar line around the bioremediation properties around hemp. If we use hemp in polluted areas for bioremediation purposes, will we have issues with it penetrating into the food system, and how can you actually trace that?
That's why for now it's important to grow in clean areas the cannabis plants that will be used for food or for medical purposes. So actually when the heavy metals and the CO2 are absorbed by the plant, they stock into the roots and not in the upper part of the plant. But what happened when we cut those plants and the roots, we have to remove also the roots, and what we are going to do with those roots contaminated, and how we can give to the operator that is taking off those roots some health insurance of the work he's doing. So it's not easy right now, but the plant really absorbs a good quantity of heavy metals, but not that much. So to decontaminate a square meter, you need more than 10 years or 12 years of constantly growing, not just cannabis and also other plants. But right now, because as Brittany was saying, that the plant absorbs a lot of pesticides and heavy metals, we always have to be sure of what we are selling, of how hemp is made. So that's why maybe other countries' production can be cheaper, but they are safe.
Brittany, do you want to add to this one?
Sure, yeah. I've heard of some remediation efforts in locations in the States, and they're really focused on using fiber. So it's important to note that when farmers are growing for CBD, when they're growing for grain and for protein, and when they're growing for fiber, they're very different seeds and genetics. So obviously, when we're trying to clean up the soil, we're going to stay away from those where the final product is food. But they do believe that growing for fiber and throwing some of those fiber seeds out into those dirtier soils could be a really great space to clean up near the waters where we've had a lot of drainage and the pesticides that have just been dumped into the soil for years from these GMO crops. It's a perfect rotational crop to get in there, clean it up, and then move on with that fiber.
Will.
One of the questions here is around infrastructure. So I think Tegan and Emilio mentioned the need to invest in more infrastructure. Question here is what sort of infrastructure?
Tegan, do you want to?
It's probably a Lachlan.
A Lachlan one?
Infrastructure in terms of delivering end
Processing,
product.
I assume. Processing.
Yeah. It's funny because Australia and New Zealand is one of the last countries in the world to even venture into investing into processing equipment for the cannabis plant. We're well behind the eight ball. There's been millions and millions of dollars spent in Australia on fibre processing plants that still don't work efficiently. And we send thousands of bales to these people yearly, and there's not much done with it. Although there are some beautiful hemp homes built, There's no biodegradable Shep pallets that are going out into the market and going around the world that are being stamped with, made in Australia. So I think there are a lot of people looking into it, and there's a lot of money and capex, I guess, formulating at the moment. The right people to go with and the right projects to begin with is something that I think they're quite hesitant on, as anyone would be. It's a risky thing to jump into, but as every sort of new embryonic industry is, you need to take a bit of risk to get a bit of glory.
So from a harvesting point of view, can you use conventional harvesting?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so it's the processing where...
It's the processing. We've used conventional headers, for the past 6 years quite easily with small modifications. We've used direct drill seeders, we've used air seeders, we've used precision planters. The only thing we haven't done is just what the grass industry does, is fly big planes over crops and just drop millions and millions of seed all over the soil. It's not something we can do with that, but it's because it's a high value crop.
Yeah,
you need to take care of what you're doing.
Totally agree with you. And now the thing is that we are developing some small machines to give the chance to the farmers to create their own seed oil already, or to prepare it. It depends on what they want to do. They want to grow grain for animal food, or for humans, or it depends on what you want to do. But if we had the space and the harvesting machine that you have here in Australia, we're still collecting and harvesting by hand in Italy and also in Spain, because the spaces are really different. We'd have hills and narrow places, so that's why we are now developing some new system to harvest, and it's not that expensive as it were 10 years ago.
Okay. Will, back to you.
Any questions from the floor?
Up the back there.
Hey, my name's Oliver. Another question was, as you said, you're using already some conventional machinery that they use to harvest, crop of sugarcane and stuff like that. I don't know, is there any other things like, olive refineries and stuff like that, using similar machines to make oils and stuff like that?
Oh, 100%. I was about to actually touch on that. They're already...
For examples?
For example, Stony Creek Oils is a big oil processor of peanuts, cashews, macadamia nuts, olive oils, all different types of nuts, and the same sort of cold press machinery can be used to process hemp. It's no real different. And there's no point, I guess, in my opinion, in reinventing a wheel that already works really well. The only issue is with the processing of the fibre side. That's a more technologically intertwined, complex process. You're splitting fibre from hurd, and you're turning fibre into something that can be put onto already manufactured cotton gins that have been working in Australia for decades, and they've been working really well. To be able to make long hemp fibres that are compatible with those cotton gins is going to take some time, and we've been working on that. But the other side of it is the hurd, which is a soft woody core part of the plant which can be used for hemp houses, and what we create biodegradable pallets with and whatnot. So,
thank you.
Yeah, step by step.
Great. Any other questions from the floor?
I just thought I might provide some perspective on the fibre market for industrial hemp around the world. So my background is in cotton spinning and ginning. The numbers are there's only 60,000 tonnes of hemp fibre produced worldwide. So there's not very much hemp fibre on the ground. A lot of what you see in the supermarkets that comes across that's labelled with hemp doesn't have much hemp in it, or it has linen in it. But that's not saying that there is real potential for this industry. It's a great biomass crop, and it does require some specific, as Lachlan was referring to, some specific machinery to refine that fibre for non-woven use and textile use. So just to give you some perspective, the 60,000 tonnes of around the world is not very much. There is 26 million tonnes of cotton fibre produced every year, and we as consumers consume 70 million tonnes of polyester. So So there's lots of substituting to be done.
Excellent. Look, on that, I think we might wrap this up. It's been a great session. You know, it's fantastic to sit here with 4 young people who are passionate about a new industry here, about adding value, and also about doing it in a sustainable way. So it's a really good story. These people will be around. Please catch them after. But please join me in thanking all of them for their time today.
Thank you.